your fabric is soaking in your water and soda ash, you can then begin to deal with your dyes, okay? Your dye mixture is going to come pre-packaged in a bottle like this one, okay? On the bottle it says that it's got dye, urea, and salt in there, okay? I want to demo to you how we put that mixture in there and talk a little bit about why that mixture, okay? So first off, I'm going to put my gloves back on, which again, I pulled them off and sort of recycled them. I have reused this pair a few times. They will eventually get a hole in them, but since they're just protecting my hands, not from germs, but from product, as long as they don't have a hole in them, I'm good with them. One thing that I'm going to want is a dry funnel. One right there. My other funnel is wet. Okay, so as I said in the last video, we use the fiber reactive dyes because then we can basically use the exact chemicals that we need for the process that we're doing. There is a dye that I'm sure you may be familiar with that is called a union dye. It's made by RIT. It's sold in Walmart, it's sold in Michael's, it's sold all kinds of places, and it has a bunch of different chemicals in it that are made to work with a lot of different kinds of fabric. We use that here in the, I was looking to see, I don't know that we have any right now. We use RIT sometimes here if we just want sort of a generic tea dye or something like that, just to tone down a color or something. We don't use it a whole lot for a couple of reasons. Because it is geared for a lot of different things, it doesn't do any one thing well. It also means that you're using a lot of chemicals that you don't need to be using for any specific, maybe potentially for the specific thing that you're doing. The great thing about the fiber reactives is that we can then target our chemicals in that way. The chemicals that we use for the fiber reactives also they are not the kinds of things that you want to have hanging out in your kitchen for long periods of time, for sure. We use them in fairly small amounts. What I want to stress is that when we talk about natural dyes and natural dyeing processes, we are not always talking about processes that are incredibly ecologically friendly, okay? What we use for the fiber reactives is we use urea, which is naturally occurring nitrogen, which is used frequently in fertilize. Again, we know that that is not the best thing for the environment. It's also not the most horrible thing for the environment. The other thing that we use for this process is common table salt without the iodine in it. That's what's in this, in here. And then there are the chemicals that are in the dye itself. When we use more natural products for dyeing, like indigo and that sort of thing, a lot of times for those processes we're using heavy metals as the assist or the mordant. We're still using things like urea. That gets used in a lot of different dyeing processes. So I always like to talk just a little bit about that. As in many, many things, the word natural does not mean that it doesn't have an ecological cost to it. Okay? We try to use things in small amounts when we are doing processes that may have an ecological footprint. Okay? All right. So let me talk a little bit about what is in your mixture. And I'm going to put my mask up on my face because I'm going to open up this jar of dye. Okay. The first thing is the dye itself, which if you can see down in there, which it's kind of hard to see because it's a little dark, is a powder. It's in a powder form. Okay, which is why we keep a lid on it, because it can float in the air. Okay. The urea is in sort of a pelleted form. Okay, let me show you a scoop of it. Okay, it's in a pelleted form, like that. Okay, it's basically pelleted nitrogen. So what I did for your bottle before I sent it to you is I mixed the urea in there, about a half a teaspoon. I put about half of that, maybe about a quarter of a teaspoon of salt down in there. So what these are is, these are what are known as mordants. It comes from the Latin mordere, to bite, to help it hold on to the fabric. Okay, that's what those chemicals do. Then we're going to put about a half teaspoon of the dye down into your container. Okay. Oop, set up you. My funnel is too big. Like I said, my smaller funnel is wet. Okay. That's why we didn't have you do that at home, is because you kind of need a funnel. Okay, so what's down in the bottom here, you can see, is your little group of chemicals. Okay? What you want to do now is you want to again use water. We're going to fill it up to about there. Okay? So you want to have about a half an inch of head space there at the top of your bottle. For this again, you can use warm water. It doesn't have to be, in fact, you don't want it to be real hot. You want it to be just a little warm. Okay. A little more than that. Okay. There we go. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put the lid on your bottle. Okay. And you're going to shake it up. Again, you want to have a space to work in where it doesn't really matter if you get it a little bit messy. Okay. Maybe not best to do this in your kitchen. Your bathroom might be a better choice. I've had several artist friends that their bathroom is their dyeing space in their house. I have done it in the bathroom. Also done it on the back porch or out in the yard. Okay. All right. So because you have those little pellets in there, you can kind of hear when it's all mixed up. Okay, and that's pretty mixed up in there just now. Okay, so your next step, and again, you want a place where you can be a little messy and a little wet. This is a movable thing that we have on our sink in the basement. So I'm going to shift that to the other side so that you can see me put the dye on the fabric over top of the sink. Okay, so here are, again, remember these, right? We have our fabric that's soaking. Okay, you don't want to rinse this or do anything to it. You want to pull it out of there. Okay. You can sort of squeeze a little excess out of it. Okay. Then you can begin to apply your dye to it. Okay. This is the bottle that I just mixed up. I have another bottle over here that I mixed up. And I recommend that you do this if you have leftover dye. You can see on this one, I put the color of the dye, which you won't know what that is until you get it on your fabric. I put that it was deep purple dye plus urea/salt, okay? We label everything down here in the dye studio so that we know what is in a container, okay? So I'm going to take a lid off of the purple, and these, it's getting a little difficult for me here. I'll set it down. They just pop off. There we go. Just don't want to shake dye everywhere. Okay. This, I do know what this is. This is sage green, is what this is supposed to be. Just going on a little dark. So on these, I'm going to do the edges with the sage green like that. Again, this is all artist choice, okay? So you can do what you like. Then I'm going to do the purple on these edges, okay? This is probably going to have a lot of white in it, this particular fold here, because as you can see, there's a lot that's going to be to the inside on this fabric. Okay, and seeing this, you can tell why we wear gloves. Okay, but I've done one, and you can see I haven't really used a whole awful lot of that dye. Okay, so you're going to have some dye left over as you do this. Okay, which means you could do several other things. Maybe if you have a piece of white fabric that is all cotton or all linen or all rayon. If you have a t-shirt, you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to set that there for just a second while I'm going to get a plastic bag, because once you've done this, what you want to do is you want to take your plastic bag and you want to put your project down in that bag. You want the dye to stay wet, damp, on the fabric for 24 hours, okay? So I'm going to put it in the bottom of this bag, and I'm going to tie it up, okay? Then I'm going to set it aside, and I'm going to leave it for 24 hours, okay? You can do both of yours or all of yours and put them all in the same bag, or you can do them one at a time and put them each in their own individual bag. Depends on how many bags you have and how much you worry about the colors mixing up with each other, okay? All right, so we will meet back in 24 hours when we'll rinse these out and see what they look like, okay? Great.